Welcome to Love Lattes, the podcast designed for women who are ready to stop settling and start living a life full of authentic love, confidence, and real connection. I'm your host, Victoria, the self-love scientist, speaker, and coach, and I'm here to help you reclaim your power, deepen your relationships, and fall unapologetically in love with yourself. So grab your tea, your latte, or your favorite beverage, and let's get started.
Have you ever felt like your past pain is holding you back from real love and happiness? What would change in your life if you could truly love yourself boldly, unapologetically, and completely? Well, my loves, we're going to find the answers to those specific questions in today's episode. I am joined by the incredible Navi Bliss, a certified relationship coach, speaker, and author. Navi went from surviving abuse and toxic love to teaching people how to fall in love with themselves first. And in doing so, they attract everything they've ever dreamed of. Welcome to Love Lattes, Navi.
Thank you so much for having me.
Navi, first up, I want to ask, why is it important for us to heal these wounds from the past?
It's so important for us to heal these wounds from the past because they're running a pattern in our lives, right? And if we don't heal them, then our life is being run by our wounds as opposed to us being able to consciously create the life that we want, right? Because more than anything, our nervous system is attracted to what feels safe. And what feels safe to our nervous system is what we have previously experienced, not what we desire, right? So if you have previously experienced abuse in your past, that feels safe to your nervous system because your nervous system knows how to survive abuse. And so you are going to call in, if that pattern is running behind the scenes in your life, you're going to call in inadvertently more abuse into your life. And it's just because our brains are wired for survival, not to help us thrive, right? Because if you go back to like caveman times, if there's one path you were going down to hunt and there was one bear on that path and it wasn't that big and you knew you could outrun it and like you could get to whatever food you needed to get to and wherever you needed to go, and the other paths are unknown, so you don't know what's there because there could be more bears, bigger bears, other predators that could kill you, right? Your brain is going to take you down the path that it already knows because you know how to survive and your brain is trying to keep you alive. And everything in our past, it perceives in that way, and anything that is new, even if that is healthy and that is good, it'll perceive it as a threat because can you survive it? You've never had kindness in your life. Can you survive that?
Thank you. No, I think that's a really good point. Like we just become so accustomed to, as you said, like what our nervous system is responding to. And I think it's interesting that you use the word safe. And in those situations, it's not. But again, how will we know when it's just something we've, just become accustomed to? So it definitely sounds like it is a challenge for sure, especially like you said, like when you're first exposed to kindness or even a different version of love that's more soft versus, threatening. Um, what would you say is, do you find like folks are having a challenging time with this experience?
Yeah, definitely, right? Because the challenge is people are clear on what they want, but they don't know how to get it, right? And in going after what they want, they might be attracting new people into their lives, but then as soon as they get to know that person, they realize it's the same person in a different body, and it becomes a frustrating experience that's creating this feedback loop and the feedback loop is there has to be something wrong with me because why is it easy for everyone else? Why is it working out for everyone else? Why am I struggling? I'm the common denominator and there's something wrong with me. And you are the common denominator, but not because there's something wrong with you, but because you're attracting from this place of your wound. And so that's why you keep attracting the same trauma over and over again.
So if someone notices that, right, let's say they notice the pattern, like, for instance, like for women who are dating and trying to find even like the one or just like I've heard it. I live in DC right now, and I swear I hear a lot of like, there's no good guys out there. And or it's like dating is toxic in the city. And to be honest with you, I don't believe it is. I do believe it is a perspective and mindset, but I wouldn't have that mindset had I not gone through my own healing journey. So what was it like for you to also like register that as well when it was like, no, this is different, but I don't know how to navigate.
Yeah, so the first thing I had to do is like when I reached my breaking point, it was after walking away from my second like abusive relationship in a row and realizing that I was able to um leave that relationship because of a lot of grace, like a lot of circumstances aligned, because it's very dangerous to leave an abusive relationship, right? And because like I was able to leave, and in that moment, even though I didn't understand how to attract better, I did understand the danger of that situation. Like I was acutely aware of that. And I decided that I needed to take a step back because I was not responsible for the abuse that I had endured, but I was responsible for what I kept allowing into my life. And I decided that I just had to take a step back, and I was willing to take a step back and do whatever work I needed to do on me to end up in that situation again. Because I was in that moment, I had this clarity that if I ended up in that situation again, I was not going to survive. I was not going to make it. It was like, it was going because I'd been in one abusive relationship, and then the next one was even more violent, right? And I knew that it was going to be something that was escalating unless I was willing to stop it. And I made the decision right there and then at that moment that until I could figure out how to choose better, how to change what I was attracting, even if I never could, I wasn't willing to go back and do the same thing over and over again. So I needed to change, and it was a breaking point, and I had to step back, and I had to start choosing myself and actually just face my wounds, because a lot of times you chase these relationships and you get in relationship after relationship after relationship because it's actually a way of avoiding yourself. It's You don't have to face yourself, you don't have to sit with yourself, you don't have to be with yourself. That's the hardest part, and that's where you have to start, because you can't outrun yourself.
No, that's a really good point, and I really appreciate you sharing that. That must have been a really tough situation, but also very powerful and very brave to recognize like, no, I cannot continue this further knowing. And I think that can be such a very profound experience to know that if you were to continue and, choose and stay here, that it wasn't, it was not going to end very well, or at least serve you in the best way. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's one other thing that I wanted to say, because, when you said that there's a lot of women that will say, like, oh, like dating is so toxic and it's there's no good men out there. The problem with even saying that is like it's reflecting a belief that you have, right? But if you want something that doesn't exist, you're not even going to actively be able to search for it with intent, right? Like if I say that I want to have a real life pink unicorn, and then but I don't think that pink unicorns exist, they don't exist, right? That means like I'm going out into the world, and already, because that doesn't exist, I'm looking for something that could be close enough that I'm willing to settle for that isn't exactly what I want, right? So first you have to change your beliefs and actually believe that good relationships exist, that good men exist, for you to be able to hold the intention of what you want. Otherwise, if you don't even think that that exists, you're automatically right off the bat going to start settling.
Oh my gosh. Yes. No, what you're saying is on point. I feel like, a lot of listeners can relate to this. And I myself remember just like, there was a part of me that knew I was like, yeah, there's, good people. But again, I had my fair share of dates that were not, they were not for me. It was not safe. It was toxic. And making that decision to walk away knowing that there was something better can be, pretty is very compelling. And what do you think it is, or what do we need to do in order to, you mentioned like the beliefs, right? Like there's a part of you that believes, no, like like you said, settling and finding the one. I think there's a lot of women out there who are like, oh, well, I don't believe in soulmates or I don't believe in true love. And then, people have that whole like, oh, it's going to happen when you least expect it. And they're like, it's not going to happen to me. And it's such I, a part of me is like, oh, don't say that because you're so worthy of love. But that's again, my own personal journeys and tools. So what would you say, are some tools or the mindset that can help women flip that belief to know that there is something better out there? There are greater relationships out there.
We'll be back after a quick break.
I've been thinking a lot about patterns lately, especially the ones that show up in our relationships. For a long time, mine looked like overgiving, people pleasing, and convincing myself that if I shrink myself down just a little bit smaller, I would be enough. But knowing a pattern and actually breaking it are two very different things. And trying to untangle that alone can feel overwhelming. That's where therapy can help. Having outside support can help you recognize your patterns without judgment and make choices that actually support you. And that's why I'm grateful for today's sponsor, BetterHelp. BetterHelp makes therapy more accessible by connecting you with a licensed therapist online so you can get the right support in a way that fits your life and your schedule. Love and Latte listeners can get 10% off their first month of therapy by going to betterhelp.com/love and lattes or by clicking the link in today's episode description. Breaking cycles isn't about fixing yourself. It's about learning to love yourself differently.
One is just like change how you're observing and perceiving the world, right? And sometimes like this means like going out and looking for evidence that you want for the things that you want, right? So you can, even if you don't have it in your actual life, the people that you know, look for evidence of people that are in blissfully happy relationships. Look for evidence of people that are so in love, because this will help you believe that even if it's a far off possibility, at least it's a possibility that you can start to buy into, because you're not going to shift your beliefs overnight, but you have to start finding evidence of this. And the more you complain, the more you're in the circle of people that are complaining, you're finding more evidence of people that are unhappy and other people that are telling you that they're miserable and all relationships are miserable and everything sucks. And you keep going down this rabbit hole and finding more evidence of that, more evidence of that. So you want to start to shift and start to focus on creating evidence for what it is that you actually want. And then spending time. So even if you find people virtually that you don't know, right? Spend some time, because like in any part of the self-growth journey, right? Anytime that I wanted to elevate myself, I started by getting books because I didn't know a lot of healthy people in my life, right? That were writing books on personal development. That was like a place that I started. And in reading those books, I was spending time with those people, right? So I was changing the environment around me to start reflecting more of what I wanted. And then I started to get more evidence, more opportunities, until I actually started to have people in my real life that were reflective of seeing what I wanted in my life.
No, I love that. I think finding the evidence in your reality is a wonderful way to know that it is possible for you. Like I think one of my favorite things to look at now is I'll see like a very old couple and I'm like, oh my God, I can't wait. I can't wait to be covered in my tattoos holding my hand of my person.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And yeah, the more that you look for it, the more that you're gonna see it, right? I mean, one thing uh that they always say is when they're like a crime is committed or whatever, eyewitness testimony is the least reliable, but it's not the least reliable because people lie, but people see what they're looking for.
Oh, that's good. That's a good one.
and where their focus is, right? And so that's why different people are going to see different things, because they're focused on completely different things and they're seeing things from their perspective, even though the same thing is technically happening in front of them.
Yeah. So if you're, let's say you're coming out of a toxic relationship and because you've made that choice, you're on your journey and you start looking for evidence of like a healthy, safe, very caring, like you kind of fill in the blank with your own words, really love. Um, what can women do to really like take that belief that it gets to be theirs? Because I feel like some might struggle with that idea because of what they've experienced, because it can be that whole, oh, this won't happen to me. I'm not good enough, and they could see the evidence by putting themselves in those containers, the groups, like following people and whatnot. But how can they kind of like learn to trust that really?
So it's two separate beliefs that need to be tackled. One, that it's possible, and second, that, well, it's three actually beliefs, because one, that it's possible, second, that it's possible for you, and the third is that you're worthy of it, right? Because even if it becomes possible for you, you might not be able to hold it, right? So first you have to, it has to exist as a possibility in reality to even be possible. So that's like a good place to start, because you'll also have less resistance for that, right? And then you have to believe that it's possible for you, and then that ties hand in hand with the worthiness aspect of it, right? And this is where you can start looking like even deeper, because you can like start challenging the beliefs that you have about yourself, right? So some people will have a belief that like, because of the way that their body looks, that they can't find love, right? And that they lack worthiness because of that. Well, if you can pinpoint that, you can also start to look for evidence of that. Is there somebody that has a similar body type as you that is in love and is loved well, right? Now it's like you have some other evidence that's chipping away at that, that's showing you that's possible. And then the worthiness aspect of it, this is where like I created my 4 pillars of confidence, because everyone talks about how you need to love yourself, and but no one tells you like, where do you start, like how do you start like building belief in yourself, and how do you start doing that? And so this is something that I came up with that really helped me, and I think it's great for people that are coming out of deep trauma, that they don't know where to start. And like perhaps something like the affirmations or something like that is actually creating too much resistance, because affirmations are something that can be beautiful, but when you're coming from this place where your self-worth is in the dumpster, it creates too much resistance, right? Standing in front of a mirror saying I'm beautiful, and like, you feel like absolute garbage. It's not working, right? So for my 4 pillars of confidence, the place that I like to start for the first one is to live your values, because how I view confidence is being fully at peace with yourself, right? So it doesn't mean that you think that you're a supermodel every moment. You will have moments that you think that. And then there's going to be moments where you're just in acceptance of yourself, right? Like where you don't feel great, but you accept that, and you're kind and you're loving to yourself. And so how that happens is by coming into alignment with all parts of you. And so when I say live your values, most people are like, I'm already living my values. Of course I live my values. But where this becomes tricky is you can have values that are in conflict with other values that you have. And this creates this sort of war inside of you where you're not in alignment and you're not at peace. And so you don't have that inner confidence, right? So let's just say, okay, you value um, uh, health and fitness and well-being in that way, but then the other thing that you value is you're a foodie and you would value like adventures and other things, right? And your idea of health and fitness is tied to, I have to eat clean all the time, I have to work out twice a day, I have to do all of this. And so but then you also love to try new restaurants and you love to try new foods and go to different places. So when you're like either following this fully clean lifestyle and you're working out all like twice a day and you're doing all of this stuff, there is this part of you that's like denying this other part of you that starts to feel like bitter and resentful because it's like, oh, but I don't get to experience all of this, and this, like, this sucks because I value this and I'm focusing only on this, right? And then when you're like out at those restaurants and you're having those tasting experiences and whatever, then you're hating yourself in that moment because you're going against your other value of health and fitness and how you view it, right? And this is where just a lot of this comes with like reframing things, right? And changing how you view things. And sometimes it can also be dropping what you value and seeing if what you value is yours or if it was placed on you by another person and you're just carrying it around with you. And so when you start listing out things and you see things that are in conflict and you see how you're defining things, either you have a choice, you could let go of one of those values and you could create alignment within you. You could redefine the story. You could integrate them, right? You could decide that um you know if you eat clean like 75% of the time, and then you have these, like, you allow yourself freedom the rest of the time, that is healthy. That is what a healthy lifestyle is. Right now you've redefined it, you've integrated that, so you have alignment and you're not hating yourself when you're doing one thing and hating yourself when you're doing another, right? um and this goes for all kinds of values. Like, other values that often conflict for people are, they value financial success and they might have the idea that you achieve that through hustle and hard work, and then they also value fun and freedom, and that goes against their value of hustling, because when they're having fun, they're like, I could be working harder, I could be doing this, and then they're hating themselves and not even having fun. And then when they're working hard, the other part of them that wants to just have fun is super resentful and is hating them because they're not having any fun in their lives.
Amazing. These are amazing pillars, and you put these all together as part of your journey.
Yeah, so that's the first one. And like I said, I like to start there because when you have this inner resistance, listing out your values isn't going to create so much resistance, but it's bringing so many things to your awareness and it allows you to work through it, right? And then my second pillar of confidence is to live your passions. And um, because you are not going to be confident and you are not going to feel good if you're living a life that you're not passionate about. Now, I also understand that not everyone can just throw away whatever job they have and go like run after their passions, because you have bills to pay and you have responsibilities and things like that. But it's about integrating your passions in your life, because this is going to help you feel more worthy and it's going to help you feel more confident. So finding things that make you feel good, that bring you joy, that you're passionate about, activities that you're incorporating into your week. Because if you imagine talking about yourself to another person, right? And even, let's just say you have a job that you hate, that you need this job for income right now, and that's all you have to talk about, you're not going to feel very good talking about your life. But maybe I don't know, you have an interest in pottery and you're taking a pottery class twice a week in addition to this job. But then you get to talk about your pottery class and you're lighting up from the inside. You're instantly becoming more magnetic, right? You're stepping into this version of yourself that feels good. And you start to become more magnetic, more attractive, and you start to like yourself in those moments that you're showing up doing the things that you enjoy doing. And in that, you're also like, it's in like, these are the pillars, like the base of where you start for confidence. Because again, most people are not going to have so much resistance to this that they can't do this, right? Sometimes the challenge is finding things that you're passionate about, finding things that you like, but this is where you get to experiment and try a bunch of things and find things that light you up. And what lights you up doesn't have to be what lights someone else up. It just has to be what lights you up. Because anytime you hear someone talk about something that lights them up, even if you're uninterested in it, the fact that they're lit up by it, they become more interesting to you. And just the same thing is going to happen for you with other people. Um, and then my next pillar of confidence is to cultivate self-trust, because you cannot love somebody that you do not trust. And this also applies to yourself. So, how people ruin self-trust is, if you're in a place where you're so unhappy with your life, you want a 180 overnight, right? Because you're like, I hate myself and I just want to be different. I want everything in my life to be different overnight. And so people start to set really, really lofty promises and then they don't keep them and then they don't trust themselves, right? So like maybe you don't work out at all and you're unhappy with the way your body looks and you're like, okay, I'm going to start working out for 3 hours a day. I'm going to wake up at 4 in the morning and I'm going to work out for 3 hours a day, right? And what happens the next day? It's 4 a.m. and you hit snooze like 20 times and you don't do it, and then you feel like a bigger piece of trash than you did before, right? And it's because you made this promise to yourself that was so lofty that you couldn't even keep it. Whereas if you changed that, if you started to examine the promise you were keeping to yourself, instead of saying from not going from working out to working out so many hours a day, if you said, I'm going to wake up tomorrow morning and I'm going to do 15 push-ups, right? Now this becomes a promise that is easy to keep to yourself, and not those 15 push-ups, you're not going to look like a different person by the end of the day or the end of the week or the end of the month, if you keep doing that every day. But what that is going to do is build trust in yourself, and it's the building of the trust in yourself that is going to make you feel better, and it is going to make it easier for you to keep bigger promises to yourself and to do more and to create actual lasting change in your life. And then when you say things to yourself, you believe yourself, and you can put yourself in situations where you can be vulnerable as well, because now you trust yourself to be able to walk away if you say you're going to walk away, because you believe yourself. If you don't believe yourself, you will either just end up stuck in those situations because you can't stand up for yourself, or you will become so prickly in your boundaries because you don't know how to be vulnerable and hold that with softness, and be very, very repelling to people in that way. And then the last pillar of confidence is to practice loving kindness to yourself. And then there's 4 areas where you need to do this every single day, because self-love is a practice. It's not something that you get to and it's just, okay, now I'm done. Now I love myself and I'm good, right? You have to, it's a practice that you have to engage in, because it's through the actions that you take that you are also showing yourself that you are worthy and you are deserving. And even if you don't believe it, those actions over time, you're proving it to yourself, right? And the 4 areas are: you have to do something for your spiritual well-being, your mental well-being, your physical well-being, and your aesthetic well-being. Your spiritual well-being, this can be really like anything that connects you to the world, like to the world, to the universe, whatever you believe in. If you believe in a religion, you could practice something related to your religion. If you don't, you could go out in nature and remind yourself that you're part of this like bigger world, this bigger ecosystem. And this is very, very helpful, because when your problems seem unsurmountable, if you can remember that you are part of a bigger world and you are just this small person on this big planet in this like expansive universe, it can help put some of your problems into perspective, just to connect to that on a daily basis. And again, this doesn't have to be this big thing that you do, whatever it is that works for you. Every night you could look up at the sky and like connect with the stars for a minute. It doesn't have to be something monumental, but just something to ground you in that fact. Then for your mental well-being, you want to show up and take care of yourself in some way. And this is, again, going to be really different for every person. Maybe it's going to be a 1-minute meditation. Maybe you're going to journal for a few minutes. It could be, maybe you're going to go for a mental health walk. It's going to be different things for different people, and it doesn't have to be the same thing for you every single day either, because you could have an array of things that you do, but you want to make sure that you're doing something to ground your mental well-being every single day, because through the practice of that, you're letting yourself know how important that is. And then for your physical well-being, right, you want to be doing something every single day. And again, this is going to vary from person to person, and it's going to vary day by day. Maybe one day you wake up and you drink a glass of water, and that's the thing that you do for your physical well-being. And maybe another day you're going to run a marathon, and but it's something every single day to know that, for you to know that your physical well-being matters and you're prioritizing it in some way. And then the last is your aesthetic well-being. And I included this because you cannot feel good if you do not take care of your aesthetic well-being. And this can be a way that people actually punish themselves, right? Like, so they won't even shower, they won't even put on clean clothes, they won't take the bare minimum effort to take care of themselves, right? And it's a way to make themselves feel unworthy. And so this is where you have to take the bare minimum effort at least, right? And like I said, some days you're going to go full glam, you're going to be in the ball gown and the full makeup, and some days you're just going to shower and put on clean clothes. But it's that action of taking care of your aesthetic well-being that you are signifying to yourself that you matter and you're worthy of being seen.
These are amazing pillars, Navi. And for everyone listening, I hope you took some notes because there were a lot of amazing, amazing takeaways when it comes to creating these ways to like boost your confidence and really learn to love and nurture yourself. And I just want to recap really quick, for everyone who was like tuned in as much as I was like, write it down, write it down. And when it comes to these, pillars of confidence to create more love in your own life. Navi shared that one, you need to understand what your values are, and learn how to remove the ones that aren't relevant to you anymore. And then perhaps even entertain new values that excite you and there are things that you want. The second pillar was follow your passions and do your passions in your daily life. And I really appreciate the transparency because, things might be difficult and you can't, leave your 9 to 5 right now, but maybe you spend an hour a day or 2 hours on a Sunday and navigate those passions, find ways to integrate them. And then developing self-trust, that is a really, really big one. And you definitely hit it on the head earlier, Navi. Like you cannot have a thriving relationship without trust, but that relationship cannot have trust if you don't even trust in yourself with your actions, with your intentions. So really work on, this is not an overnight system. This is something that's going to take some time, some vulnerabilities as well. And finally, creating some well-being actions. I love that. I've never heard of the aesthetic well-being before, but I do think these pillars are amazing reminders for people to take in. I do think slow and steady is always the best way when it comes to boosting confidence because, truth be told, like the journey itself, like whether you're healing from old traumas or toxic relationships, they're still going to be there because, they're a part of your history, but that doesn't mean you have to continue entertaining those narratives, what was said about you or anything else. So this was such an amazing episode, Navi. I really appreciate your expertise and your stories and tools. Is there anything else you would love to share with our listeners before we close out today?
I always like to let people know that sometimes when you're listening to a personal like development sort of podcast like this, right? And you're in a place where your self-worth is really low, you can take it as a way to punish yourself and be like, oh gosh, I've been doing this wrong and I've been doing this wrong and I've been doing this wrong and I've been doing this wrong. But the thing is, what instead of doing that, what you need to do is celebrate yourself because you showed up and you listened and now you have awareness. You can't change anything without awareness. And because you have awareness now, you have the opportunity to change. It's not about punishing yourself or beating yourself up for the things that you have been doing. It's about noticing them and just becoming aware of it. And the thing is, they're not all going to change overnight. But if you start if you have been so negative and so terrible to yourself, even if you're just 2% less terrible to yourself every single day, you're going to feel better and you're going to have that much more energy that then you can put into doing more and doing more. And the change happens slow and gradual, but then one day you just wake up and all of a sudden you feel like a different person.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that with Navi. And to the listeners, I hope you really enjoyed this episode, took some excellent notes. And it's so powerful. And it feel so good, even when it feels scary, but it feels so good to know that you have the ability to shift this narrative, to change your beliefs, and to learn how to fully fall in love with yourself and then create more loving relationships. So absolutely amazing conversation, Navi. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.